give the call to the Honourable Brian Walker.
Thank you, Acting President. It has, of course, been some time since the incidents with the wicked campers, and the Honourable Kate Doust mentioned the passage of time, and I am very happy to say that I will support this bill going forward. I think it's important that we do have some form of decency in public. And I have to also note that there hasn't been any repeat of that worst behaviour, which we all agree needs to be tackled. I particularly support the comments made again by my esteemed colleague, the Honourable Kate Doust, as the reaction she had as a grown woman when confronted by things which were deeply offensive. But this concern, as indeed she has also already pointed out, needs to be balanced with the concept of free speech. Now, I'm sure all in this chamber would agree with me that free speech does absolutely not mean the right to say whatever you want. Our rights of freedom are balanced by the responsibilities we owe to those freedoms. We are free people in a free country, but that does not mean we can say things in a way which is bound to be offensive, taken offence. We might express ourselves as an ex-rugby player in one way in the front of the scrum as a hooker. I do experience certain words were used at certain times which might well have been offensive at the dinner table when returning from the emergency department. But my worry, and that I think of many of the ordinary West Australians, is how are we about to throw good humour out? Because we have to be aware there is a balance. See, offence, and this is a very delicate thing, if I take offence at something, then the question is, am I being unreasonable? For example, if I have a picture of, say, the Prophet Muhammad on my car, a fundamentalist Muslim might well take such offence that he feels or she feels the need to take my head off.
That would depend on how the image was depicted.
Indeed so.
Have an image on your car.
Quite so. So we have here the context here, and it's a subtle thing. So some people might well take offence. I can imagine, for example, some of my fundamentalist Christian friends might well take offence at the 666 painted on a car, or a satanic triangle, the pentacle, the inverted pentacle, suggesting this is corrupting our children as it's introducing Satanism into society. Now, it's a bit of a stretch, but there are people who will be offended where no offence was meant. And that we need then to have some form of a balance, I think, in understanding what is actually offensive. Now, for example, and this is coming from the Legalised Cannabis Party, of course. This actually was a picture on one of the wicked campers. It said, there was a slogan on its back doors. Now, please don't take offence. It says, weed is not a drug, it's a plant. I'm not a dealer, I'm a florist. Now, you might agree from the outset that humour is objective, but I found that funny, also accurate. And it would certainly give me a chuckle if I was to pull up behind the lights, behind the car at the lights. But someone else might well take offence at that. It's an illegal drug. And if we have our outdated drug laws, of course, but they are still drug laws. And people can very well take offence at the thought that illegal drugs are being proposed in a free society. Will that complaint raised against this vehicle have merit in court? Or will it be laughed out of court? And these are the questions we have to answer. Now, nothing is stopping us from agreeing that the egregious, offensive advertising, which would offend any sensible, sane, reasonable person, is not acceptable in our streets. And so it might be useful in the Committee of the Whole House to go through some of the ideas that might give some kind of protection to free speech, while setting a boundary beyond which this is unacceptable. Now, a lot of our legalised cannabis members would actually be keen to hear the answer to that specific example of the weed not being a dealer, I'm a florist. That would make a lot of sense to the people who are looking up to our example. Because this bill, if that was the case, this bill is going too far. It's not middle of the road, to coin a phrase, but we ought to be aware of transcending the bounds of freedom of speech, while at the same time accepting the awesome responsibilities that come with that same freedom. No one in this community, no one wants to see references to rape or violence. I particularly have a problem with the shock value slogans of the very worst kind. And it also goes beyond that. The shock jock, the radio shock jocks, who take pleasure, if you like, in raising people's ire, vilifying or abusing people or groups of people. But it's also important to take this opportunity to reassure ordinary West Australians that we aren't the humour police. We're not out to stomp otherwise innocent and harmless fun, all in the name of political correctness. Now, I'm sure this is not the intent of the legislation, but I would like some reassurance that this is in fact what is intended. There has to be a sensible middle ground. I'm hopeful that middle ground is within reach, and I would appreciate some reassurances that before we vote this piece of legislation into the statute book. And with that, I will give notice to the government I intend to support this legislation.